Hey everybody, Andre here, and today we are talking about how to succeed in music school. So, this video is basically for prospective music school or conservatory students who are planning on pursuing a major in the musical arts in some capacity. Um, just to get it out of the way, so you know my bias, I went to music school. I did my undergrad at a non-music school, but I did get a music major. And then I got my master's and my doctorate at a music school, at a conservatory. And then I've been teaching at a conservatory now for, about 5 years, I guess. Maybe a little more than that. Maybe 7 years. I have lost track. So that's my bias, just so that we're totally clear what my perspective, where I'm coming from with this. So I'm going to give you a number of tips. I'm not sure exactly how many tips are going to be, but this is drawing from my experience both as a student, a relatively recent grad, I'd say, and as a teacher. So the number one thing that blows my mind that people don't do. So the number one tip how to succeed in music school is go to class. And you're thinking, well, yeah, obviously, but you would be surprised how many people just don't go to class. And this really frustrates me. It frustrates me as a student, as a former student, and as a current teacher because, music school, it ain't cheap. All right? So maybe you're there on a scholarship, maybe you're really lucky, that's awesome, but by and large, you're probably there spending gazillion dollars and or taking out a gazillion dollars in loans, putting yourself in debt or putting your family in debt. So if you're not going to class, what the heck is the point? So that's my number one thing. If you don't go to class, like, why are you here? Why are you in music school? If you want to be a musician and you don't want to go to class, just go move to New York City or move to LA or move to, some other musically active area where you can pursue your goals of being a musician. You don't have to bother with this. So go to class. It's the first most obvious tip that I got for you. Okay, tip number 2 is have an open mind. So in music school, you're going to experience a lot of different perspectives. You're going to experience a lot of different kinds of music. Sometimes you're going to even question, is this really music at all? And it's really important that you have an open mind about it. This is a really wonderful anecdote that I want to share with you. A friend of mine likes to tell it. And one of our great professors, David McBride, who passed a few years ago, he would go in to the music library and he would check out a bunch of scores of Wagner. Check out a bunch of scores, check out a bunch of CDs for Wagner. And my friend who was working at the library at the time, he'd say, "Really, Wagner? I didn't think you were the type." And David would say, "Yeah, every year I like to just take a listen to the stuff just to remind myself that I really don't like this." And I thought that's amazing. You're actively listening to something that you don't like, but you're giving it a shot. And I just think that's so amazing. There's going to be a lot of stuff like that where you're going to be challenged to experience things that you normally wouldn't do. So have an open mind because you never know what you might like and what you might not even thought that would even exist. So going off the coattails here, try things out. Try things. Try to experience different perspectives and try to just learn. That's why you're there. You're in an environment that should be encouraging you to explore, because it's a lot less scary to explore things in music school than it is out in the real world when, you know, you have to make money in order to pay the bills. So music school is the time to have an open mind and really try things out, and it'll set you up for the future. So have an open mind. There's this concept here. So there's like things you know, things you know. So that's your world, okay? And then there's also things that you know you don't know. Okay, so things you know. I know that I'm gonna brush my teeth every morning. I know that 2 plus 2 equals 4. Things that you know you don't know. I know that theoretical physics is a concept that is important to the world, but I know that I am not going to be able to do that. So that's what that is. So that's a bigger circle. Okay. Then there's things you don't know. You know. Think about that for a second. Things you don't know that you know. That's pretty cool. Somehow, hopefully, in your studies, in your exploration, and in your life, you'll figure some of those things out. And that's pretty cool. So that's another bigger circle. And then the biggest circle of them all is things you don't know. You don't know. Things you don't know, you don't know. And that right there, if you have an open mind, you might be able to chip away at that. So I think that's pretty cool. So tip number 2, have an open mind, try things, and you might start to unpack this thing a little bit more. All right, so the third tip is establish relationships, or, just general networking. So this is really important, and this one, I think a lot of people, including myself, really struggle with sometimes. I am a severe introvert, and I really remember that going into my master's, I knew for a fact that I was going to have to get out of my shell, and really just talk to everybody and just really meet as many people as possible and establish personal and professional working relationships with as many people as possible. Because music making is, at the core, one of the most human activities that you can be a part of. And it's so important in music school. I mean, just as a comparison, if you go to engineering school, for example, okay, and you get a degree in, I don't know, computer engineering, perhaps, and then you go out into the real world, chances are that you're not going to encounter those same people that were in your same school, unless you go to like a conference or whatever, or maybe you'll work at a similar company if you're working at a big company. But chances are that field is so huge that you won't interact with the people that you went to school with ever, or if you do, it'll be not very common. That's not the case in this field. If you go on after music school to become a professional musician, that world, it's smaller than you think. Everybody knows everybody. And even if you don't know someone personally, you have like a couple of degrees of separation from them. You would have heard of them, or they would have heard of you, or, so establishing relationships in music school is extremely important. Um, and so, piggybacking off of this, not only should you establish relationships with your peers, so people who are doing the same thing as you, maybe in the same major, you should also, by the way, not just in the same major. If you're a composer, you should not only hang out with composers, but you should also like make friends with performers, because hey, without performer friends, who the heck is going to play your music? And if you're a conductor, you should make friends with composers, because that'll be a really amazing thing for your career, in order to be, I'm the person who premieres and commissions the cutting edge. So yeah, there are a lot of different scenarios where that works, but peers, not just in your major, but also establish relationships with your professors. More likely than not, your professors are not just they're not just sitting around in a classroom. Like I teach at a college, but I'm also an active performing musician. I gig all the time. I write music. I I conduct. There's and I'm not the only one. 98% of college music professors are active musicians. So by establishing relationships with your professors, you're going to have an inside scoop. You're going to have an advantage. You're going to have direct knowledge into whatever field you're trying to get a foothold in. But that just comes from not being afraid to talk to people. And from there, I want to say that the other most important tip is be kind. Be kind and be humble. Because life is too short to work with a bunch of a-holes. Maybe that's a little direct, but it really sucks to work with people who you are professionally incompatible with, because of tension. Because of tension, because either you're being the jerk or they're being the jerk. And again, I just want to say that this is not the norm. Okay, the norm is that people are going to be kind. People are good. But there are times where things might not be so easy, and because music making is an inherently human, very human activity, there's gonna be ego. Everybody has an ego. There are two different degrees, sure, but everybody has opinions, and that's okay, right? It's okay to have an opinion. It's okay to stand for what you believe in, but be kind when you do it, and definitely be humble, because I don't care if you were like the biggest hotshot violinist or whatever, biggest hotshot composer. There's always going to be somebody better. Okay? So be humble, because the learning never stops. There's always something that you can improve on. So just be nice to people, because you don't want to people. And here's another thing: because everybody knows everybody, if you get that reputation of being someone who's hard to work with, guess what? You're not going to get called for gigs. You're not going to get the same opportunity if you would have just been nice. And maybe it sounds obvious, but it should be said. All right. So the fifth tip kind of has to do with this. Um, but competition is healthy. So let me explain. Okay. So competition, unfortunately, this is a small field. Uh, there are only so many jobs. If you're auditioning for an orchestra, there are only so many orchestras out there with only so many seats available, and there are going to be exponentially more players trying to audition for those seats. Now, of course, there are smaller, community groups, uh, semi-pro ensembles that are available as well. But speaking just about the big house orchestras, there's not that much room. Same thing for professorship positions. I mean, Lord knows, finding a full-time professor position these days, it's remarkably challenging. Remarkably challenging. So there's going to be a lot of competition, but competition is healthy because it pushes you to be the best that you can be, and that will only make you a better musician and better professional. Now, with competition, there are a couple of caveats. Okay, so if you are on the wrong side of this, perhaps you miss out on an opportunity because someone else just edged you out. Don't be discouraged. Rejection is hard. Rejection is hard, but this is gonna sound awful, but get used to it. Rejection is hard, but get used to it, because that's just how it goes. There's just so many opportunities out there, right? So what you can do is you work hard and get better. So let me give you an example in music school. Okay, there might be like a concerto competition or something, and you have been selected as one of the people in the concerto competition. That's awesome. Okay, good job. You should feel proud that you were selected, and you go against some of your peers, and you lose. Okay, that sucks. But you got there in the first place, didn't you? You were selected. And even though you lost, you got a chance to play a concerto in front of your peers. Hopefully you showed your skills. And you'll know that next time you're gonna do better, because that's what you're gonna do. So even though losing stuff is difficult, it's only going to push you forward. Now, also, if you get rejected to stuff, be courteous. Be kind. Be courteous and be kind, because these people are your peers. Even if someone beat you in that concerto competition, go congratulate them. Say, man, you sounded awesome. You really you earned this. That was a great performance. Even if you don't believe it, because what are you gonna get out of saying, oh man, f that guy. I played so much better. I can't believe this. What a jip. I was robbed. That's not gonna help anybody. That's just gonna make you bitter, and then you're gonna not try as hard next time. And that's not, maybe that's, I really stand by that mentality. If you're negative, you're just gonna spiral. So even if even though rejection is hard, always be courteous, always be kind, because this is a really human activity that we're doing here. So you should be good to your fellow human. All right. Tip number 6 is make your own opportunities. So in music school, there are going to be opportunities that are given to you, like the aforementioned concerto competition, or if you're a composer, there are going to be score calls where you can write for various things, or there's going to be auditions that you can take for things, or you can volunteer, or there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you, but don't wait for these opportunities to be put on a plate in front of you. Don't wait for them to fall in your lap. You go out and you take the opportunity and run with it. Because there's going to be, depending on the size of your school, depending on the size of your major, there's going to be dozens of other people who want that same opportunity. And when you leave music school, there's going to be hundreds of people who want that same opportunity. So if you get used to making your own opportunities, going for stuff, you're going to be in a really good position to succeed in life. And you're going to get a lot out of your education. So make your own opportunities. Okay, number 7, and this is pretty far down the list. I would say that this list is in no particular order except that first one. But number 7 is practice. This should be a no-brainer, but there's a lot of mechanical skills involved in music making. Whether you're a performer, whether you're a composer, whether you're an engineer, you have to practice your craft. Whether it's with a writing utensil, or with your computer, or with your instrument, you got to practice, because you have to be the best that you can be. Because otherwise, why the heck are you here? So, yeah, that should be a no-brainer. But you should practice, and you should practice at least 40 hours a day. All right, tip number 8, and this is actually the exact the exact counter to this, is know when not to practice. So I am a firm believer in practicing efficiently and practicing intelligently, and it will take a while for you to figure out what that means for you. But if you're practicing night and day, 24/7, there's going to be diminishing returns. And what that means is that after a while, you're actually not getting anything out of the practice session, and you're probably going to be reinforcing bad habits after a while. So, yeah, know when not to practice. Know when to put down your instrument, leave the practice room, and go do something else. Have non-musical hobbies. Okay? Non-musical hobbies will really help. It'll be for your mental health. It'll be just so helpful. For me, my non-musical hobbies, they were gaming and they were exercise. They still are. They really help. They really help to get out of that zone, because creativity works in mysterious ways. If you just aren't practicing and working all the time, you're going to get burned out, and you're going to get your brain is just going to be unhappy. And then at the end of the day, why did you start doing music? In order to feed your soul, right? To express yourself. And too much of this can really harm that drive. So, yes, practice a lot, but also know when not to practice. Very important. Okay, tip number 9 is ask questions. Ask questions. This is so important. Take charge of your education. This kind of goes back to this one where you have to make your own opportunities. But if you just wait for stuff to be explained to you, or wait for things to just kind of click, kind of make sense, chances are your journey is going to be harder than it needs to be. So, for example, like if you're in a class and you don't understand a certain topic, you're probably not going to figure it out on your own unless you really, really work quite hard. So why don't you ask a question? You don't necessarily have to ask the question in class. Like if you're a super introvert like me, like I hated asking questions in class. I hated it. But I did it anyway sometimes, just because you got to do it. But what you do instead, go after class, approach the professor, say, hey, can you help me out with issue number 4, issue X. Can you help me understand this? They're gonna want to. They're gonna love that, because speaking as a professor, we are most of the time anyway teaching things that we really care about and we are, experts in, or try to be experts in. And so we're gonna love talking about this material. And asking questions to us, it'll help us to become better educators, because then we can figure out the best way to help you. Yeah, that's why we're there. Most of us really love the act of teaching. So we're going to want to answer your questions. So ask many questions. Take charge of your education. Because otherwise, again, why are you here? If you don't understand something, you got to figure it out. There's probably a reason for you to learn it. All right. Tip number 10 is the last tip that I'll give you. And it's kind of the hardest one to talk about, really. But it's be grateful. Be grateful, because at the end of the day, like I've said, making music is deeply human. It's a humanity. It's an art. We are trying to help people experience joy, experience emotion, not just joy, in their daily lives. And what an honor that is. What an honor it is to create something that touches the soul. And so be grateful that you are learning to do this at a high level. Don't complain so much. Don't complain about your coursework. Don't complain about getting too many assignments. Don't complain about this, that, or the other. You are here in music school to make art. And you are here in music school to do something that is really beautiful. You could be working a 9 to 5 at a call center, doing mindless work. Could be doing food service, getting yelled at by ungrateful customers. You could be doing a whole number of things that are not directly impacting people's souls. So whenever I hear people complaining about, the various things that they need to do in music school, I always try to remind them that you're here because you want to be, hopefully, and you're here because you're wanting to do something really beautiful. And if you didn't want to do all the things that come with music school, like the work, like the learning, like expanding your horizons, why are you here? Don't complain. Be grateful, because the people around you that aren't complaining, that are being grateful, they're gonna notice, and that comes back to those relationships. They're gonna know who is, who's doing the complaining and who's being kind and taking everything in stride. And so think about how those relationships are going to continue on after you get out of music school. So I know that might be a difficult one to hear. Certainly we are all allowed to complain, right? You are allowed to complain because life is hard sometimes, right? But move on. Move along. Take a moment to be upset, then move on. Because there's not enough time. There's just not enough time. You can't afford to waste your time complaining about stuff, because in that time that you're complaining about stuff, somebody else is getting better. Somebody else is getting better, and they're gonna edge you out on the next audition. So that's kind of the most difficult one, I think, to hear, but it is important. So anyway, folks, I hope this was useful. I hope this, if you're a music student, some of this maybe you needed to hear. And if you're not a music student, I mean, I think all of these things still apply to us as professionals in our daily lives. And sometimes it's nice to be reminded. But anyway, if you like this video, think about liking it, hitting that like button. Think about subscribing to the channel if you want to hear more stuff. And yeah, if you have other tips for how to succeed in music school, I'd love to hear it in the comments. So go ahead and leave a note down there. But anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.